Hey YouTube, what's going on? So tonight I decided to make a vegetarian dish, and focusing on a few of my favorite vegetables, and that is a sweet potato, avocado, and mushrooms. Those are three of my favorite vegetables. So I'm going to incorporate all of those into this dish. In addition to that, bringing in some of the Indian flavors that I so love. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to have a roasted sweet potato, and I'm going to make a stuffing of black beans and shiitake mushrooms. I'm going to top that off with an avocado Thai Sweet Chile Crema. And so let's go ahead and get started with this. Kind of just to lay out what I have on my table here. I've got my sweet potato, which I've got washed. I've got a red tomato, vine ripened tomato. Got a can of black beans. I got my container of shiitake mushrooms. I got some of this Thai chili garlic sauce, Thai sweet chili sauce, olive oil, some green onion, salt, pepper, and then my spices here, garlic and ginger. Now, to start off, I'm going to slice this sweet potato in half. And I've got my oven already preheating at the moment to 400 degrees. So I'm just going to slice this in half and alright, so I've got that in half. And at this point, the sweet potato skin is pretty good. The skin is edible. It's actually packed with a decent amount of nutrition in the skin. And I'm going to take my baking pan here. And I'm going to put the sweet potato right on there. And I'm just going to put just a touch of olive oil on each side, and I'm really gonna rub that olive oil into it. Now what this is gonna do is we're gonna get a nice caramelization onto the sweet potato when we take it out of the oven with this, and it's just gonna taste absolutely wonderful. So I'm gonna put that now face down and just continue. I'm gonna rub the oil into the skin as well. Alright, so now that's all set, and now it's ready to go in the oven. So at this point, I am just going to put this in the oven, and it's going to take about 30 minutes to bake at about 400 degrees. Okay, so now I've got the sweet potatoes are in the oven, and now I'm just going to prep the stuff for the stuffing on the sweet potato. And like I said earlier, the stuffing is going to be made of black beans and shiitake mushrooms with some spices. So I went ahead and took a can of black beans here, and I rinsed, and they're draining now. I'm going to take my shiitake mushrooms here, and I'm going to chop those. Just going to give these a rough chop. Now, I've got multiple steel bowls kind of just set out onto my countertop here, and the reason I have multiple bowls rather than just kind of keeping it in just one on the chopping board here is I like to have everything prepped as I cook it. So as you can see here, I gave my shiitake mushrooms a really rough chop, and I'm going to keep them at this consistency. Now I'm going to set this aside into a bowl here. Now I'm going to have multiple bowls set aside, my multiple prep bowls. Now I like to prep everything that way when I'm at the stove, I just toss it in one thing at a time. I normally separate stuff based on when they're going to go into the dish. So I know the mushrooms are going to go in right after the onions, or the green onions, the garlic, and the ginger with some of the spices. So I put those separate. Now in this next bowl, I'm going to do a rough chop on the green onions here. Now, on these green onions, the green parts are going to be used as a topping. The white parts of the green onion, I'm going to stir fry those. So I'm going to separate those, and I'm going to chop these up. I'm going to set this all to the side here. And I'm going to go ahead and chop up the garlic, and then I'm going to grate the ginger into that same bowl. Alright, so I've got the white parts of the green onions chopped with some garlic minced in there, and I've got my ginger grated in there, set aside. Got my mushrooms here, and I did a rough chop on these tomatoes, which I'm going to toss in with the mushrooms because they will be going into the pan at the same time. Set those aside. Now, I've got everything ready to make the stuffing for these sweet potatoes. Alright, so now I'm going to put together some of my spices and the sauces, and I'm going to include in this dish into the stuffing. One of the very important pieces is this chili garlic sauce, which honestly is probably, like I said earlier, my favorite sauce. So I'm just going to take a couple of teaspoons of this, and I'm going to toss it in right on top of the tomatoes here. Now this, you can go up or down on the amount you use of this based on the heat level that you can tolerate. Now, spices. So we're going to use salt and pepper. So I'm going to go ahead and... I like using Himalayan pink salt. Just got all the more minerals and everything in there. Going to put some fresh black pepper here. Ends up being about a teaspoon of each of those. And I'm going to put a little teaspoon of turmeric, teaspoon of coriander, and a teaspoon of cumin. Alright, so we're ready to go ahead and make the stuffing here. Got the white parts of the green onions, the ginger, and the garlic set aside here. Got my spice mix done, and I've got my mushrooms, the tomatoes, and the chili garlic sauce here. A little bit of olive oil, and I have my black beans as well. So in the pan I have it set to medium heat, and I'm just going to drizzle just a couple of tablespoons of olive oil in there, and I'm going to let that come to temperature. Alright, so I got my oil heated up there, and I just dropped a couple of mustard seeds in there just to see when my oil heated up. Now I'm going to drop in the garlic and the ginger and that, and then I'm going to saute this for just a minute. Now we're about a minute later on the saute. You can see the garlic is just starting to become browned. Green onions are starting to become translucent a little bit. At this point in time, I'm going to drop in my tomatoes, mushrooms, and that chili garlic sauce. And I'm going to stir fry this together. I just let this saute in all this beautifulness. The fragrance, the aromas and the fragrance is coming off of this is it's just spectacular. Alright, so I let that saute for about a minute. You can see the mushrooms are starting to get broken down. Tomatoes are still holding there. And everything's starting to smell perfect. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put in those spices that I mixed earlier. I'm going to stir that up, let that go for another minute. Alright, so it's been about another minute. The spices are really getting absorbed into those shiitake mushrooms there. Tomatoes are there kind of keeping everything moist. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and drop in my can of black beans there. And I'm going to stir this up and let that cook for about another minute, and then we'll be all done with the stuffing. That's the stuffing coming together absolutely perfectly. I really wish you guys could smell this. When you make it, leave a comment in the bottom just how beautiful this smells and it's going to taste at the end of the day here. So, I've got this done. I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to go ahead and get started on the avocado sweet chili crema. Alright. So, this crema, or this avocado sauce, is very, very simple to make. I'm going to make it inside of a blender here. I put about 3 tablespoons of crushed tomatoes. I had some in the can. You can also just use half a regular fresh tomato. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put some sour cream directly into the blender here. I'm just going to put about 4 tablespoons of sour cream. And I've got some Thai sweet chili sauce. Gonna throw some Thai sweet chili sauce in here. I'm gonna put about 2 tablespoons of this in there. This is a very versatile sauce and I absolutely love using it. Then I'm just gonna scoop out my avocado and just drop the avocado inside the blender. Okay, gonna put some salt and some pepper. About a half teaspoon of each. Oops. And now I'm gonna just blend this up. Alright, so I just pulled the sweet potato out of the oven. Just stuck a fork in the top on the skin side just to check if they were done and they were good. You can see just this absolutely gorgeous color on these sweet potatoes here. So, now I'm gonna go ahead and plate my dish here. I've got my avocado crema here, sweet potatoes, some green onions, and I've got my stuffing. So, we're gonna just layer this up on the plating here. So let's take half the sweet potato. Now, in this situation, I do like to just cut the sweet potato just into fourths, just like that, just to help some of this stuffing get in there. And then at this point, I'm going to take some of my stuffing. I want to make sure I get all the tomatoes and the black beans here, and the shiitakes. And I will say this, I was picking at the shiitake mushrooms a little bit earlier, and I could easily eat that plain. Alright, so just kind of layered that right on the top there. And now let's sprinkle just a little green onions and grab a spoon here. And then I'm just gonna drizzle just a little bit of this avocado crema on top. Top it with some more green onions. And there we go. Shiitake and black bean, tomato stuffed sweet potato with some avocado Thai chili crema.